Hello, my name's Elaine Hanzak. My son was actually born just over 20 years ago now, yet that whole era still is etched so much on my mind because it certainly wasn't the story that I'd intended. I am often asked to share my story because even all these years on, people tell me that they can relate to it, and hopefully out of my experiences I can help others to have a happier and healthier early start to parenthood than I did. I'd always wanted a baby. I'd spent 32 years dreaming of that amazing moment, that lovely skin-on-skin contact that you get. I'd always dreamed of my own child from being a child myself. I loved to play house, I always had my favourite doll around me, and my big ambition in life was to be a mum. I was a teacher for children with severe learning difficulties, a job that I adored because again it involved children, but also because I thought that being a teacher would actually be a great job as a mum, so I could juggle both motherhood and a career. My pregnancy started out absolutely wonderful, and I think I was one of those annoying pregnant ladies who actually knew how big the fetus inside her was at even 13 weeks, 22 weeks. I devoured all of the literature, I had my plans made, I went to classes, I thought I knew everything there was to know about birth and motherhood. After all, I'd taught children by that time for well over 10 years. And I'd done my research. I had a younger sister who was 10 years younger than me, who I'd helped bring up as a little girl. So I thought I knew it all. My expectations were high, my preparations very detailed. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I was quite poorly and had to have a couple of stays in hospital, and yet that refined my list even more as to what I needed in hospital, what I should take, what I still needed to buy. The birth, though, wasn't the wonderful all-Mother Earth experience I'd been looking forward to. You know, the one we planned for, don't you? Yes, with the panpipes playing, the candle lit, the incense burning, and eventually this baby just gliding out. I need to read different books. It might be like that for some people. For me, it certainly wasn't. It started out that way. I wanted to give birth in the water birth suite, which started out that way. After labouring for many hours, I was told the baby was in distress and I had to get out of the pool. From my ideal, the scenes turned into one that can only be described as traumatic, as the baby was stuck and I had potentially got to go to theatre to get him out. Eventually, though, he was born naturally, but the cord was round his neck and they whisked him away. So that lovely skin-on-skin moment I'd waited 32 years for didn't happen. Then I got into trouble because they said I found out later I had a retained placenta, a postpartum hemorrhage, and it was me that had to go to theatre myself to get cleaned up and sorted out. So when I came around, it wasn't that initial sense of post-birth that I'd always dreamed of. I hurt. Every little bit of me hurt. But during the next few days and weeks, I recovered, yet my new baby hadn't read the same books as me. His version of a good night's sleep was maybe 2 hours at a time. And I, Elaine, put myself into this hamster wheel of expectation about all the things I felt I should and could be doing. Instead of resting when baby rarely did, I'd be running around the house feeling that the cushions had to be straight, this had to be done, that had to be done. And I attempted to live my previous life, as in before being a mum, just again, but with this baby who didn't sleep, recovering from a traumatic delivery. At 6 weeks, I had to go up and have the neck of my womb sorted out because apparently it was still wide open. So I had another night in hospital. Bit by bit, I seemed to be back at the hospital for minor things, it seemed, with both myself and my son. The biggest trouble came, though, the week I was due back at work. I was back at my teaching job in September when my son was 4 months old, when he was actually rushed into hospital very, very sick himself with suspected meningitis. So we then spent 10 days and nights in hospital with a very ill baby. I say we because I had to stay with him. I was still breastfeeding him, and although I'd begun to wean him off me, they did say that he needed me, he needed my milk. So literally a few days before I was due back at work full time, I then had a baby who was dependent on me for 100% breastfeeding, and also waking then, it seemed, almost every hour. I had 2 weeks off from my teaching job, during which time everything was supposed to slot back into place. Needless to say, it didn't. And at that point, my GP said, "Elaine, I feel this is no longer about the stress of the birth. It's no longer about your son's illness. I feel this is about you. You have postnatal depression." My reaction could have been one of denial. It wasn't. I was actually relieved. Why? Because she gave me a reason for why I was feeling so ridiculously pathetic, why I felt such a failure, why the thing that I'd always wanted most in my entire life was now beginning to be my downfall, why even the simplest of things that I wanted to do felt like mountains I had to climb, and I just couldn't seem to cope anymore. A word, a four-letter word really, that to me just was completely opposite to everything I'd expected of early motherhood. I'm very close to my family, yet I pushed them away. I pushed friends away, feeling that I had to do it all, becoming almost like Superwoman with my knickers on over my tights. I could do it all. So instead of even resting even more, which I should have done, I absolutely ramped up all my activities. I look back now and I think, oh, Elaine, just stop. You don't have to do all of this. Does it matter if the washing's not done on a Friday or whenever it's supposed to be done? Does it matter if you're living out of food out of the freezer? It doesn't matter. I didn't hear those voices though. I went to a support group, I took medication, yet I continued to wear what I now consider the mask of shame, of guilt, of a belief that it couldn't happen to somebody like me. Postnatal depression? No. That happens to the people who, really, let's face it, can't cope in this world. They're maybe a little bit pathetic. Maybe they didn't want their child. I did. I felt I had it all. Nice house, nice husband, good career, loving family, gorgeous baby. Yet why did I feel so just down all the time, so emotional one minute? I felt so lonely, so aggressive at times. I felt very neurotic at times, irrational behaviour, and exhausted. That type of exhaustion that just a couple of nights of catching up from won't make any difference. A deep-seated lack of energy. As the weeks and months went by, my sick note continued to get longer and longer, and just before Christmas I completely unravelled. I'd continued to not particularly lie, I just wasn't honest to people about what I really needed, how I was really feeling. And there was one particular day that I just could take no more. I became that close to actually hurting my darling little boy, feeling that this thing had ruined my life. I went walkabout in the early hours of a December wet night, simply wearing my nightdress. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't particularly want to die. I just needed this brain switching off. That type of night that, no matter what you do, you just can't switch off. I'd had months of that. Being unable simply to go to sleep. I couldn't do it anymore. And I walked the streets, and there but for the grace of God go I, when I read the awful headlines of new mum's body on a railway line, new mum's body on a motorway. That could have been me had geography been different. Instead, they found me curled up on a church doorstep. Why was I there? Because I wanted the peace of mind I saw in some of the very firm believing Christians that went to the Mums and Tots group at the church I went to. That's what I was looking for. I spent the next 2 months in a general psychiatric hospital. I was told I'd chosen a bad time. It was Christmas. There was no staff for the local mother and baby unit. So I spent 8 months that year with people of all ages of ladies suffering from dementia, alcoholism, drug-related things, eating disorders. A very difficult time, very difficult place, yet I needed to be there. I was tried on various medications, and ultimately I had ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. I was diagnosed with purple psychosis. usually occurs in the first few days or hours post-delivery, possibly as due to bipolar or any other hormonal changes. But for me, maybe it was all the stresses and strains and everything else during my early motherhood that led to me being psychotic. One minute I could be seemingly sensible, the next I was self-harming, I bit my dad, I threatened to hurt my baby, all of these things. The ECT taught me to relax. It taught me to sleep again, because part of that process is to have a general anaesthetic. And when I was back on the ward, I learned to recreate and visualise that lovely sinking feeling that I got drifting off into the treatment. And once I got my sleep back, little by little, I got my life back. Certainly wasn't an easy ride, very much a roller coaster ride, but generally on the up. When my son was about 18 months old, I actually went back to work full time. And that's where it could have ended, my story as such. I was well again, I was off antidepressants, and I learned a lot of things about myself. Looking back, why did I get as ill as I did? Maybe it was because of the stigma that still surrounds mental illness. Why on earth was I not honest at times? Why did I not ask for help? Was it the stigma? Was it the guilt? I think maybe. Another thing that had a huge impact on me was lack of sleep. When people tell you with a new baby, rest, rest and rest again, oh, I wish I'd listened to that advice. It really doesn't matter if the house is a mess, if you haven't got your makeup on. It really doesn't matter. Get help. And with the things that you feel that need doing, ask yourself the 3 Ds. Do you need to do it, ditch it, or delegate it? I know I would have done that a lot more again. The other thing that I felt made a difference was feeding, and that's another area that people worry about. I breastfed my son, even up to when I was actually admitted to hospital, and it was the one thing I loved. Some people with postnatal illness find that breastfeeding is the worst thing for them. For me, it was the only thing I felt I could do well as a new mum. So please be kind with your judgments on people about their choice of feeding. Whatever is best for them as a mum is actually best for the baby, because a well mum means a much better chance of a well baby. The stigma I decided to fight against, because even people would say to me, I'm so surprised, you don't look the type to have had a mental illness. You're so efficient, so organised, so confident. Yet during my illness, I was none of those things. So back in the last bit of the 1990s, I was inspired to write a book about my experiences, and I had to do it little by little because I learned you can't do it all in one night anyway. And over the next few years, I created my book, Eyes Without Sparkle, there it is, which actually came out now in 2005. That was one of the first autobiographies that I certainly had known of a full story of a journey through perinatal mental illness. And I'm very humbled to say I know that there are ladies still alive because they've told me that my story helped them to continue keeping on and not taking their own life. And I'm so pleased with that. For me, as life continued, sadly my marriage didn't. And the next few years of life were also problematic in many ways, but also very fulfilling in others. I gave up my teaching career to speak about mental illness, particularly postnatal depression and psychosis, and I have spent those last few years writing, blogging, reaching out to people to create awareness and to say to people, hey, you can get it. With time, support and treatment, you can get your life back again. The sooner you say that you need help, the sooner the better you will go on to make a full recovery, as I did. One question that many people ask me, well, what do you do next time round? If you're unexpectedly pregnant again after a previous perinatal mental illness, or you want another baby, or your partner doesn't, what do you do? So I put together all of the research, all of the knowledge that I'd acquired over the last 10, 11 years into my second book, which is called Another Twinkle in the Eye, to help people with that decision. I'm not saying to people, I never went on to have another baby, therefore you should. No, it's about saying, let's look at what happened with the pregnancy that caused you problems. Let's look at the risks. Let's look at the conversations that you need to have, maybe the practical support, and give you lots of ideas and suggestions as to how, should you choose to have another baby, it could potentially be happier and healthier next time round. I'm delighted to say that, again, people have told me that there now are new children, new babies, either in this world or on their way, because of some of the tools and resources that book gives both healthcare professionals and parents out there. And that is just incredible. So if you're watching this as a parent who is maybe worried about mental health, please, please remember it's just as important as your physical health. As you would have a physical pain and get treatment for it, please do for your mental health. There are so many things you can do to get good and positive well-being, and we all must work together because it is everyone's business. Having a baby is truly an amazing experience, and although mine wasn't as positive in the first place as it may have been, the joys and the delights of parenthood now are absolutely incredible. I wish you all well on whatever journey you're on.